12 o'clock on your Tuesday afternoon now. Welcome in. It is the halftime show. Tyler Head and Terry Ford will be along in just a moment here on The Game as we navigate through the late stages of the month of June and what we can only call as peak talking season now, as after last night's baseball national championship where Tennessee walked away with their first title, we can officially say that the college sports calendar for 2023-2024 has officially come to an end. Fortunately, though, it is a very quick turnaround until football starts. We were right at, yesterday would have been exactly 60 days until week 0, if you count week 0, with those games taking place on August 24th, starting the new calendar of college sports. So not that long of an off season. We're less than, 3 weeks away until media day. So not too long of a hangover, a period of time off without any college sports going on. But we flipped the calendar over to July here in a couple days, and that's when Texas and Oklahoma will join the SEC, and all the new things begin for this new era of college sports. But going back to the last night's national championship final game with Tennessee and Texas A&M there, as we talked about a little bit to wrap up the last hour on the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs, I don't think there was any doubt in anybody's mind that Tennessee and Texas A&M were the two best programs when it was all said and done. You look at Texas A&M, who had been running roughshod through Omaha up to that point. Obviously, the pitching very efficient for them, very solid offense. Well, not as powerful of an offense as a team like Tennessee, but doing what they needed to do to get the job done. And then Tennessee, just quintessentially the best team all around in college baseball, and for good reason, and rightfully so. We're ranked number 1 towards the end of the regular season, won the SEC championship, obviously made their way through the NCAA tournament and through Omaha. Faced that adversity in that first game in Omaha where they took on Florida State, had to mount that huge comeback, won that game, and was pretty much on from there. And then last night, as opposed to the first two games where A&M got out to the lead and Tennessee put together some offense in the late stages to lose 9-5 on Saturday, and then trailed for much of the game, too, on Sunday before hitting those 2 home runs in the late stages there to pick up 4-1 victory. Last night was a little bit different. They really didn't leave much doubt. They led from the jump, got that first home run there in the bottom of the first inning, and then had a 3-1 lead for most of the game before extending that lead to 6-1 for A&M. Did make it interesting. Give them credit. The Aggies were able to close up to 1 run, including with the penultimate pitch that was a wild pitch that scored them the 5th run and made it a 1-run game. But then Tennessee able to get that final strikeout to claim the national championship. So again, very, very much a back-and-forth series on a lot of ways, but Tennessee led from wire to wire in last night's contest and claimed their first national championship as a program. And, this isn't a Ole Miss situation or anything like that from a couple seasons ago. This is a Tennessee program that has been there and done that in Omaha multiple times over in the Tony Vitello era and come close. But last night they were finally able to put the cap on it and walk away with the national championship trophy. And again, this is a program that has no signs of slowing down anytime soon. And one, for South Carolina's perspective, if you want to get back to Omaha, if you want to get yourself back in the national championship picture, you're going to have to go through them as well as the rest of an even tougher SEC next year to get to that point.
Yeah, I mean, let's give the Vols their props. Last night, they did something interesting last night, too, Tyler, Christian Moore opens up the scoring with a home run in the bottom of the first.
Yep.
But then Tennessee grinded. In that inning, they scored the 2 runs to take the lead. There was a sacrifice fly. Mm-hmm. A runner advanced on an out. They put together some hits, so it wasn't just home runs. They had the other home run late in the game.
Right.
But Tennessee scored in a variety of ways, and that was huge because usually they're a live and die by the home run kind of squad.
Yep.
But the thing about this, the last 2 games for Tennessee was starting pitching. You look at the 2 starters, Beam and our guy last night, Xander
Sechrest.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. Sechrest went 5 innings, gave up 1 earned run. Beam also only gave up 1 earned run in 4 innings. So you got what? I wrote it down here. 9 1/3, 2 earned runs, only 9 hits, 3 walks, 14 strikeouts.
That'll do it for you.
So the starting pitching was so huge in both of those games for Tennessee. And last night, I mean, Volunteers tried to give it back. They did their best. They did their best with the balks and the wild pitches and all the other stuff that went on late. But, Tennessee holds on and they get the win. And it's just interesting watching these last few years of like college baseball compared to like when you see Major League Baseball, especially like when the coaches / managers are questioned about strategy or not strategy and things of that nature. And we didn't really talk about it. Like, for example, A&M. In Game 2, and then look, Schlossnagle is one of the best coaches in college baseball. I mean, look what he did at TCU, what he's done at A&M. We'll get his thoughts on the Texas gig here in a little bit, which I thought was quite interesting. That's open. But in Game 2, now it was a one-run game, and he brought in a young kid named Caden Wilson to pitch, a freshman, with a very high ERA. Now, A&M loves his ceiling and potential and upside.
Sure.
But in a one-run game, when you're one victory away from dogpiling, you brought in a young guy with a very high ERA who's a freshman.
And I don't think he had pitched in Omaha up to that point.
No, he pitched against Oregon, I think, in the Supers.
Okay, yeah.
And so you bring him in that situation. Now, he gave up a couple of home runs. And that's when Tennessee got the lead. They opened up the lead.
Right.
Now, I look back on some of the transcripts of the press conferences, and Schlossnagle talked about Wilson. No one directly questioned the bringing Wilson in the game.
Right.
But Schlossnagle said, yeah, you know what, he had 2 bad pitches, love the kid, love his grit and this and that. But it's interesting that, for an example, in a lot of other situations, Schlossnagle, one of the first questions would be, what was your thoughts on bringing in Wilson in a one-run game, a freshman who's got a high ERA?
Mm-hmm.
And that didn't happen. And I just thought it was, I would have loved to have heard the thought process behind using him in that spot. Were you truly saving yourself for a possible Game 3? Did you really just think his matchup with who was coming up was the best in that situation? Did you like the fact that he threw well in the Supers against Oregon and you love him so much, even though he is a freshman, you decided to use him? I mean, again, maybe I missed the answer, but I looked through a bunch of different transcripts of that presser after the game, and I couldn't find anything where there's a direct question.
Right.
Because that was kind of a big moment in this College World Series in the final. You're up 1-0. It's a one-run game, and you bring in this freshman who has had consistency struggles all year, even though you love him. It is something where you go, why'd you bring him in at that point? And we'll never really know the answer, but it was very interesting to me because if you're up 1-0, you still have a shot to win this thing in 2 and be done.
Yep.
And you bring in a young guy who, again, in next year, Wilson could be a hammer.
Yeah.
He could be a phenomenal pitcher, end up being a pro, whatever. But right now, he's a young freshman who struggles with consistency.
And especially when you're going up against such a high-powered offense like Tennessee that just needs that one hit, which we saw was the Dreiling home run in the 7th on Sunday that ended up being the difference. The difference in that game. That's a pretty bold risk to take.
That was my thought. It was like, wow. And, we didn't really get a chance to talk about it yesterday at all. But, that was one of the points I kept going back to after the game was Wilson in Game 2, why? Why? I'm sure Schlossnagle, who's forgotten more baseball than I'll ever know, would give me 10 reasons why that was the right move time. And I'll go, okay, Coach, thanks.
Sure.
Just want to ask. But it is kind of that question of, at that point, why? Because you look at the guys Tennessee used. They ain't going on a limb with anybody. You follow what I mean?
Yep.
Of that ilk. So it was just very interesting. But, A&M losing last night. And by the way, I mean, you brought up Dreiling. How good was he?
Phenomenal.
Oh my God. How about that home run last night off the cement mixer changeup that just kind of stuck in the middle of the plate? Crushed that thing. And you don't realize how important some of those runs were, like that last run.
Yeah.
When you got your base runner who does the matrix like Keanu Reeves so he doesn't get tagged at home plate. And that's the run that ends up holding up.
Is that not all a scenario I think we all envisioned ourselves to be in at some point in our baseball career? Like you're just going to elude the tag, which usually never works out, but he was able to pull it off.
Yeah, and then Ensley, he knew what he did. I mean, he was jacked after that. I would have been too
sure.
if I because you were dead out.
Oh yeah,
Ensley was dead out.
I mean, you're like Houdini up there.
That was crazy. It was a fantastic slide. So give him a ton of props. And again, Tennessee, give them their credit. They win the College World Series, third time to Omaha under old Coach Tony. What's going to be interesting now is he going to be the coach of Tennessee next year?
They better be ready to back up the truck to him. I'll say that much.
Elijah was telling me there is talk in Knoxville to make him the highest paid coach in college baseball. Now, again, Texas will go, how much you offering?
He's going to have some suitors, that's for sure. But if you're, and rightfully so, I mean, if you're committed to making this program last, I mean, you pay him whatever you think he's worth.
You got to make it. He is going to, by someone, be the highest paid coach in college baseball this offseason.
For sure.
Because Texas, I think Texas is coming after him.
Well, they should.
Him and Schlossnagel's also reportedly a candidate. In the next segment, we'll play you the response from Coach Schloss. And when the response is over, give me your first thought, and I'll tell you mine at the end of it. But we're going to play that next. Because he was asked, he should look, that's a legitimate question. You don't have to ask it first, but near the end of the presser, when it was asked, it's a legitimate question. Your name is out there. Now, is it Texas wanting to get you? Is it your agent putting your name out there so you get more money from Texas A&M? For whatever reason, your name is out there for what's going to be the biggest opening now in the offseason of college baseball.
Yep.
The question needs to be asked. We'll give you Schloss's answer next because it's quite interesting. It's a halftime show. Terry Ford, Tyler Head hanging out here. Thursday, Tyler and Chris and Wes, and I don't know, I might come out there and eat free food. I mean, I might come out and see how everything's going because I just want to make sure your broadcast is top level. At the Firehouse Sub in Casey, right there on the main drag, you can't miss it. Brand new Firehouse, just like last year, wasn't it, Tyler, or like a year and a half ago or whatever?
Yeah, I think it's relatively new.
Yeah, relatively new.
We've been out there a few times.
Yeah, new Firehouse. So the crew will be out there Thursday from 9 to noon. Stop in, hang out. After they open, say hi, grab a sub. I'm sure Dreamy Josh will have merch to give away. Maybe some of Dreamy Josh's wardrobe.
Sure.
So that will be Thursday, 9 to noon in Casey, Firehouse Sub. Another Gamecock Central takeover at Firehouse. We'll come back. What did the A&M coach say about the Texas opening? It's an interesting answer. We'll get to that next. Halftime show. Terry Ford, Tyler Head, as we are rolling till 3 here on The Game. Hanging out here doing the halftime show. Terry Ford, Tyler Head. Thanks for listening, whether you're in Columbia, Florence, or Myrtle Beach. We appreciate you here on the Game Network. All right, so last night Tennessee wins. They take out Texas A&M, win the College World Series in 3. And now we focus on what is the offseason and the number one piece of business in the college baseball world, who's going to be the head coach of Texas.
Yeah, a Texas that is now coming into the SEC, by the way, which makes that hire all the more important because you are going from what's a good league, a great league, in fact, in the Big 12, to literally the toughest league in all of baseball in the SEC.
And all David Pierce did was go to Omaha 3 times in 8 years.
Yeah, the level of expectation at Texas is insanely high, but that's a program that has a rich history of winning, multiple national championships. That there have been a mainstay in Omaha for a very long time. And, you know, like we have here at South Carolina, when you don't meet the criteria of what that fan base expects, they're going to move on from you sooner rather than later. It's only been 2 years, well, 3 years, I guess, technically, since they last went to Omaha. It's not like they went on this super long drought, but they looked at where the program was. And again, going into a tough league like the SEC, and they said, I don't think David Price is the guy to take us where we want to go. So they're making the decision to move on from him now. And
the interesting part, I think I read this today, where they haven't won the national championship since 05. So they're flipping out.
Yes, that is correct.
05. Well, I think Augie was the coach then.
Yeah, and since then they've made 1, 2, 3, 4. They've made 5 trips to the College World Series since then.
That's one roughly every 4 years.
Yeah, but that's
not enough. That's not good enough at Texas.
No, it's not, and they've not been to the actual series final since 09.
So David Pierce gone at Texas, and the Longhorns, you feel like they're going to go big game hunting first.
Oh, they certainly have the resources to do so.
Yes. And the big fishes that they will try to hook. Tony Vitello, obviously, who just won the national championship at Tennessee. The name Brian O'Connor at Virginia has come up as well. He's been to Omaha many times at Virginia. And Jim Schlossnagle, who obviously, we've lost track of how many times this guy's been to the College World Series at TCU and A&M.
Sure.
A&M 2 times in 3 years. So Schlossnagle was asked at the end of the press conference about this job, about the Texas gig and the opening and the rumors of him and this job. And here's what Schlossnagle said in response to the reporter.
About your future in Aggieland.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty selfish of you to ask me that question, to be honest with you. But I left my family to be the coach at Texas A&M. I took the job at Texas A&M to never take another job again. And that hasn't changed in my mind. And that's unfair to talk about something like that. That'd be like you asking Montgomery if he's going to sign in the draft. But I understand you got to ask the question. But I gave up a big part of my life to come take this job, and I've poured every ounce of my soul in this job, and I've given this job every single ounce I can possibly give it. So write that.
Coach, thank you very much.
Coach, what follow up real quick. And that's a great answer, and I respect the fact you left your family to take the A&M job, and you took this job because you want it to be your last job, and you have poured your heart and soul, and your results have been fantastic, and I'm sure the fan base loves you and the university does. But let's get back to, you never said you weren't interested in Texas.
Well, the emotional response to me tells me he's giving it serious consideration, because if he wasn't, he'd say, I'm not interested in the Texas job.
Absolutely.
I'm focused on Texas A&M. We're, rebuilding for next year and blah, blah, blah. The fact that he went into defensive, and he acknowledged it at the jump. Like, I understand why you're asking the question. So why get so defensive if you're not actually giving it serious consideration?
Absolutely. But what Schlossnagle did is also a master class in evading the question and giving an answer.
That is your quintessential word salad.
Oh, absolutely. He said this too. I took this job to be my last job. I left my family for this job.
Yep.
Now, I'm not saying that's manipulative. I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is this. You also left the other door open to say, I came here. I left my family to come here to Texas A&M.
Yeah.
I have poured my heart and soul in this job at Texas A&M. The folks at Texas are talking to me about possibly taking what are you going to give me to stay?
Right.
Because that's really what this is about, right?
Oh, yeah.
This is
money.
the give me more at A&M so I don't entertain the Texas job.
Right. No, make it worth my while, which Schlossnagle, as of right now, is the 5th highest paid coach in all of college baseball, making $1.58 million. The highest paid coach, Tim Corbin, rightfully so, at Vanderbilt, $2.45 million. So if Texas is going to make it worth his while, I mean, you're probably going to have to bump them up to no lower than second on that list and probably about the $2 million range.
I think if you get Schlossnagle or you get Vitello, you're going to make them the highest paid coach in college baseball.
But again, Texas
can.
the resources to do that, certainly.
They laugh at what Vanderbilt's giving Corbin.
Oh, sure.
Because they know, hey, okay, that's it.
Yeah.
So if they're truly going to go and in the ocean to get the big fish, they're going to make the big fish the highest paid coach in college baseball.
Definitely.
Especially because Schlossnagle's fine at A&M, Vitello's fine at Texas.
Yeah.
They don't have to leave.
They don't. No, they are good. But if you're going to back up the Brinks truck to them, they'll entertain it.
Oh, yeah, you got to back up a couple to get them. And so the Schlossnagle answer was I'm so impressed with that.
Yeah.
Buffet. Because
Wait,
basically,
look,
he didn't say no, but he also told A&M why he came to A&M.
It's not his first rodeo.
No. That was
He's been around for a while.
Answer.
And that was perfectly executed.
Yes, it was. Hey, fine job, Schloss. That was good. That was good. When I watched that today, that's why I said, Tyler, you got to pull this one because this is gold.
Out of those 45 seconds, he never said no at any point.
Never once said, no, I'm not interested in Texas. Never once. Because you know why? He is interested in Texas. Why not?
He'd be dumb not to be interested in Texas.
And this, look, I know if you're not an A&M fan, because it's a cult. If you're an objective human being and you think about your career, think about a brand that can pay you like very few can pay you. Why wouldn't you talk to them?
Right.
Of course you would talk to them.
And, especially now that Texas is coming into the SEC, that rivalry doesn't need any more juice.
Could you see
But
him
if
leaving?
you took your former coach and he jumps to your enemy, who you're now going to be playing every single year, oh man, that Texas and Texas A&M is already appointment TV.
Mm-hmm.
I will make sure to tune in for that next year if that happens.
You might actually be more interested to watch the A&M Texas baseball game
than the football
A&M
game.
Texas football game.
Yes, definitely so.
Absolutely. So, yeah, that's Jim Schlossnagle's answer about the Texas gig. Look, if I'm Texas, you can't lose with Vitello or Schlossnagle or O'Connor.
No,
these
all great
guys are
options.
regular. These guys they might as well be Omaha residents, right?
Sure.
They might as well, just move into the state of Nebraska.
Right.
But I'm probably going Vitello first. That'd probably be my guy to go to first.
Yes, because it offers you, and I can see how old is Schlossnagle, because that Schlossnagle is 53, which again, like we're talking about with Palmineri, he could still coach for another 15 years. But I think you look at Vitello being a younger guy and somebody that has obviously, come into Tennessee and had that success so quickly. And it's saying, hey, this is a guy that could legitimately be here for like 20 years.
And not that Texas needs a program built or rebuilt, but this dude went to remember, the University of Tennessee, Vitello has won more games in 5 years than they won in a decade.
Yeah.
Most people didn't know most people in Knoxville didn't know Tennessee had a baseball program.
No, they had no reason to care.
No one cared. And now the place is packed. Everybody loves Tennessee baseball.
They're about to pour a boatload of money into stadium upgrades. Like this city cares about their team now.
And it's because of that guy.
Yeah.
I mean, whether he's a recruiter, what they've done developing, coaching. And I know his right-hand man has had a lot to do with it, who was talked about with the South Carolina job.
Elander.
Yeah, and would Elander get the Tennessee gig if Vitello left? Would they just elevate Elander?
Maybe.
If I'm Tennessee, I probably would. That's what I would probably do.
Yeah.
But let's say they don't, and maybe Elander goes with him to Texas and Vitello takes a Texas job. I go to Vitello first and make him turn me down. And then Schlossnagle and O'Connor, either way, you can't lose.
Yeah.
These are two high-level coaches. The other thing, Schlossnagle's made it with two different programs.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe he's number 2 on your list and then O'Connor. But if you're going fishing in the big water, that's the 3 guys you look at.
Yeah, probably so. And I'm looking at this list that Kendall Rogers put out for D1 baseball. And, they have Wes Johnson from Georgia, who obviously this is his first year as a head coach and obviously had a lot of success getting the team back to the tournament for the first time. are getting the team back to a super, or excuse me, to the tournament for the first time in a in a while there, and getting back to a super. Eric Bakich up the road at Clemson, Skip Johnson at Oklahoma, Rob Vaughn at Alabama, all fine candidates. But again, you look at Vitello and you look at Schlossnagle, and they're definitely head and shoulders above the rest of these guys in this group.
Yeah. So we'll see where Texas goes, but yeah, I think they start with Vitello, Schlossnagle, and O'Connor is where they're going to start. All right, we'll get back in here. There was something else kind of cool that happened last night we're going to get to here in the first hour. But next, South Carolina, Gamecock football with a flip, Gamecock baseball with the door of the transfer portal is open, and dudes are coming in. We'll get to that next, some Gamecock news. Terry Ford, Tyler Head, it is the halftime show. We go till 3 here on the Game.
Welcome back in. Halftime show. Tyler Head, Terry Ford along with you on this Tuesday. We are in the dog days of summer now, but recruiting, it sure never slows down. And some pretty significant news coming up last night in regards to South Carolina's 2025 class, as they have now added a quarterback, Flip Cutter Woods from Wake Forest to South Carolina from just up the road in Anderson, and another piece added to this ever-growing 2025 class.
Yeah, I mean, Wake Forest, it was going to Wake Forest, and now it's flipped to South Carolina. I find it interesting. First of all, nice work by Dow Loggins and Shane Beamer and the staff for flipping a kid to South Carolina. And what makes it more interesting is, okay, let's think about Wake Forest, their quarterback room, South Carolina's quarterback room. At South Carolina, it feels like if everything goes as planned, Lenore Sellers is your starting quarterback the next couple years, right?
That is the hope.
So if you're Cutter Woods, you're coming in, again, everybody wants to compete. Nobody's going to give anything to anybody. But look, quarterbacks have to make decisions today, right?
Yep.
Because you want to play. It isn't like, oh, we can play 2 or 3 wide receivers and all this other stuff. No, a quarterback is one dude.
Yep.
So you got to make a decision about, okay, I want to play. So if you're Cutter Woods, my guess would be if you see the Lenore Sellers situation, you look at Wake Forest quarterback room, maybe you would have had a better chance if you stayed at Wake, right?
Yeah.
Conceivably?
You would think so. By the way, do you know who is the leading candidate to be Wake Forest's starting quarterback
Yes,
this
and
season?
I forgot this. It's a transfer portal guy.
I can't believe he's still playing
Help
college
me,
football.
I'm blanking.
It's Hank Bachmeier from Boise State.
Yes, that's it.
I feel like he's been around for 12 years.
Well, remember, he went from Boise to, I think, Louisiana Tech,
Yep.
and he got benched at Louisiana Tech. I think I got hurt and couldn't get his starting gig back or something like that happened to him.
Uh-huh.
Then he left Louisiana Tech. That's right. I'd forgotten he had gone to Wake. That's right.
He is. Remember that list we talked about the other day? Like, that guy's still playing. Mm-hmm. This dude's been around since 2019.
And he started as a freshman at
He
Boise
did.
State.
Yeah. This is his
17th year?
Yeah, this will be his 6th season. And I'm assuming, I think 2022 he had injuries that kept him out.
Right.
But yeah, he started at Louisiana Tech last year. Not great numbers, but yes, he's the leading candidate to be your starter. Now, again, this will be his last year of eligibility, so he moves on after this season, and it does not look like they have a very deep quarterback room right now at Wake Forest. So, yes, if you're Cutter Woods, you theoretically could have had the opportunity to go in and start maybe in 2025, depending on what they do with the rest of either their quarterback recruiting class or their transfer portal. But, yes, you're coming into a much stiffer competition here in South Carolina's quarterback room based on how we're projecting out for the next couple of years.
And absolutely, you're in-state kid. I get that. And maybe you just you decide, you know what, I want to play at the in-state school. But that's the idea. And plus, Cutter Woods, look, I have not watched a lot of Cutter Woods film. I'll raise my hand. That's Wes and Chris. God love them. They deep dive into the film.
Right.
But, from what I understand, this is not a kid with a big bazooka arm. I remember, I think it was Wes talking about it today on the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour. South Carolina, before they offered, wanted to watch him 7-on-7 to make sure he could make all the throws.
Sure.
Wake Forest has that mesh offense, that system that where arm strength isn't like the top thing either. I mean, Sam Hartman was in it. No one's going to talk about Sam Hartman's great arm strength. He was a technician running that offense, and Hartman did a great job running the offense at Wake. Mm-hmm. So if you're Cutter, that's why I find this so fascinating. If you're Cutter Woods, maybe the path to starting would have been easier at Wake. Maybe that offense would have played more to your skill set at Wake. But South Carolina did a nice sell job to have you flip and come play for the Gamecocks. And look, I mean, Lenore Sellers could have a great year this year, a great year next year, take off. Cutter Woods sits for a year and listens and learns and develops, and all of a sudden he's competing for a starting quarterback gig.
And it's impossible, especially in today's age of college football, to project anything more than a year in the future. Because, yes, the anticipation is Sellers is going to be great, start for hopefully 2, maybe 3 years, and then go off to the NFL. And the natural progression tells you, okay, then it's Dante Reno's job. There's no telling how long Dante Reno wants to stick around. He may think, well, if I don't win the job by the end of year number 2, I'm gone.
Right.
You're saying, okay, well, Cutter Woods is next in line. Okay, well, you also have Landon Duckworth in the 2026 class. Like, it's impossible to put a starting job on anybody past 2024, to be honest with you. So the idea is every year, whether it be through high school recruiting or the portal, bring in another quarterback and just continue to keep that room full.
You've got to. You just have to. Because you just don't know where anybody's going to be or where they're going to go. Like I was getting ready to say with Cutter Woods, he'd come here for a year and then go, you know what? I'm not going to start for another year. I'm gone. Dante Reno. Look, I have never seen a recruit. I shouldn't say never, but you rarely see a recruit who the minute they commit to you is so all in like Dante Reno has been all in on South Carolina.
Right.
So that guy's credit. He's recruiting players. He's pimping South Carolina like nobody's business ever since he committed. But he could sit around here, like you said, for after a couple years and I got to go.
And you know, there could be a situation. Dow Loggins could move on, go take another job. Dow Loggins could get fired. We don't know what it could be that could change the trajectory of what this room is based on who's coaching it or whatever it may be. So, again, it's so hard to pinpoint where this is going to be in a couple years. But, again, for each class, if you're not bringing in a guy in the high school ranks, you get a guy in the transfer portal. So, for right now, they've at least checked that box, assuming he stays committed to South Carolina for a guy out of the high school ranks.
And props. I mean, you get Cutter Woods to flip from Wake Forest to South Carolina. So nice work by Shane and Dow and the folks across the street here. Baseball-wise, and again, I mean, Cutter Woods real quick. And again, this means just whatever it is. He's a 3-star kid. You know, he's not a top 300 kid, but he's put up some really good numbers in an offense that really fit his skill set. He can move. He's a mobile guy.
Yeah.
And again, this is what we don't talk about in our instant gratification world, but some guys show up. You know what they do, Tyler? They learn and they develop.
They do, and he's got another year of high school football where, I mean, he could be a 4-star when this is all said and done for all we know, and we get very much caught up in the star rankings, and you do have to take them with a grain of salt because it's not the end-all be-all for how good a guy is going to be, but for the numbers that he has put up and obviously led his team to a state championship this past season, you do like the success that he brings to the table in your quarterback room.
I think what you guys are talking between 11 and 12, that again, he led a high school to a state championship isn't like a football factory.
Yeah.
So we'll see. Cutter Woods, a good get by South Carolina, getting Woods to flip from Wake Forest. Baseball-wise, and again, if I read you these stats, you're not going to wow. Let's just get that out of the way now. But again, it's about bringing a guy in. He has skills that fit what you want to do. And in our world of baseball development and using video and analytics and everything else, sometimes you bring a guy in and he just is a better fit for you and his numbers get much better. But just ahead of time, want to warn you, I'm going to read your numbers. You're not going to go gaga.
Right.
First of all, South Carolina baseball-wise, they bring in from the transfer portal a lefty from the University of Miami. The kid's Ashton Crowther. Now, Crowther last year is a redshirt freshman. Now, keep that in mind, a redshirt freshman. So he's a young'un. 7.36 ERA in 36 2/3 innings. Appeared in 15 games, made 7 starts. Went 6 1/3 innings against Florida Atlantic. Only gave up 2 runs. That was his best outing. Right now, there are command issues. More walks than strikeouts. He's throwing summer ball right now. His ERA is under 4 in limited appearances in the Cape Cod League for Brewster. Basically, he needs work, developmental work. But obviously, the new coaching staff likes what they see in his arm talent. They like stuff there to where they think if they get him in and work with him, that he could be productive for South Carolina.
Sure.
So that's one. And the second one always makes Gamecock fans smile, just when you say this. A player from Clemson transferred to South Carolina.
They're always going to love that.
Nathan Hall, Clemson outfielder, who spent the last 2 years at Clemson, is transferring to South Carolina. Hall hit his slash line, 240 batting average, 327 on base, 313 slugging. Again, you're not going wow. But here's a guy that can play all 3 outfield positions. And in Summer League in Cape Cod, so far it's just been 4 games, 353 average, a homer, 5 RBIs, 6 of 17. He was ranked coming out of high school. Went to Lexington High School kid, by the way.
Yep.
The 100th rated outfielder in the nation by perfect game when he was coming out of high school. So, again, a guy that they see can play all three outfield positions, gets on base a decent amount for what his batting average was, and you bring him in and see what he can do as a developmental piece for you. He was at Clemson 2 years, so he's got multiple years of eligibility left if he chooses to use multiple years.
Yep.
So, again, the transfer portal is bringing guys in for South Carolina baseball, and you get a flip for South Carolina football. So, a good day. It's a good day.
Very much so.
I will come back here, Firehouse Sub Text the hour 803-404-6100. And they had another little championship game last night. We'll get into that as well. Halftime show, Terry Ford, Tyler Head. We're rolling up until 3 o'clock here on the game. Time to check our Firehouse subtext of the hour at 803-446-6100. Yesterday was cooking. Text line was rolling yesterday, man.
It certainly was. It gave people a lot of reason to weigh in on it. Michael asked this question in reference to Cutter Woods and his flip to South Carolina. Says, is it smart for a three-star quarterback to go somewhere like Wake Forest or a lower level so they can win the starting job and raise their stock and then eventually transfer?
Yeah, I see where I think some are doing that. Like, you watch, we'll use Cam Ward. Well, great example.
Sure.
Started in Incarnate Wood, flipped that into Washington State, and has flipped that into Miami.
Yeah. I don't think a lot of guys go to like mid-major programs or even FCS programs for that matter with the goal of like, I'm going to be here for 4 years. Like, no, I'm going to go there, I'm going to ball out, going to get noticed, and I'm going to have an opportunity to jump up to the Power 5 level or whatever it may be. So for like a guy like Cutter Woods, if you're kind of in between, I feel like that could be a viable option. Now, again, you have confidence in yourself. You obviously believe that no matter what quarterback you're up against, you're the better option.
Right.
So maybe he likes the idea of the competition at South Carolina, saying, hey, I know I'm going to get there. It's going to be Sellers' gig. They got Dante Reno there already, but I think I'm going to go in there and be better than all those guys, and I'm going to win the job. And
you also see some of these five-star kids who have go to a school, and they stay a year, and they want to see what's going on, right?
Yep.
And if they're not the starter going into year 2, they even take off.
Yep.
So it's just been it's a different world at this point. Like your boy Vandergriff at Georgia, 5-star kid coming in.
And he stayed a lot longer than people thought he would.
He hung out, was it 3 years? 3 years?
3 years.
And then realized he took a look at the room, and once Carson Beck came back, I got to go start.
Yep.
I mean, Dante Moore spent 1 year at UCLA and said, that's enough for me. I'm going to Oregon.
Yep.
I mean, we've seen these kids do this stuff. You saw the 5-star kid from Southern Cal sat there for a year, and now he's taken off, I believe, to Boise State. So to the answer, Michael, it's a great point. Yeah, maybe you go to a place like Wake. Sam Hartman did it. Riley Leonard at Duke, for an example, 3-star kid, went to Duke under the radar, has made himself a starting quarterback and showed that he could be productive playing in the ACC, and now he's parlayed that into what will be most likely the starting gig at Notre Dame.
Sure.
Sam Hartman used Wake Forest to get the starting gig at Notre Dame. So, yeah, I think, Michael, you're on it with this. I mean, go to a school, maybe not. And look, South Carolina in the SEC, you would look at that as a more competitive situation, especially in the quarterback room, than at Wake.
Sure.
We put the scenario out. You go to Wake, you might have an easier path to starting. Let's say you have a great year or two at Wake. Then to Michael's point, then you roll off to a Kentucky and maybe a South Carolina, whoever would be looking for a quarterback who's trying to mine the portal to get a veteran.
Yeah, and it seemed like, based on what Wes and Chris were saying with these conversations with Cutter and how all this happened, the SEC part of it was a big reason why he flipped South Carolina. Again, they didn't make him an offer until they saw him in the 7-on-7 to see if he could, quote unquote, make all those throws. They liked what they saw. They made him an offer, and he jumped on it. Now that also means he's probably going to get some looks from some other SEC schools as time goes along. Does he stay committed to South Carolina? Does he try to explore some options elsewhere? We'll see. It's a very long time between where we sit right now in June and mid-December when he can finally sign with South Carolina.
But wait a minute, Tyler. When you commit, it's not like you're looking at other schools, or other schools don't chase you.
No, every coach says, he's committed. I'm gonna delete his number. I'm gonna back off. We cannot communicate with him anymore because he gave his verbal commitment to South Carolina.
You think this conversation's going on with the head coach and his staff? Leave that kid alone. He just committed to South Carolina. Leave him alone.
Coaches will be in your ear until you put pen to paper with your national letter of intent.
As you're signing it, by the way.
And literally as you're writing your name, they're like, "You sure about this? Sure about this? I got a bottle of whiteout right here. If you want to write over that."
So yes, look. Wake Forest is going to try to get him to reflip before it's over with.
Again, if anything, this just ramps up the intensity of his recruiting process. His phone's going to be blowing up from the next 5 months.
But yeah, I mean, I think going back to the text, I think Michael hit on it perfect. I mean, the way the world is now, especially let's focus on the quarterback position. if you're not sitting in a quarterback room in a power league as a starting quarterback for an offense that's going to showcase your skills, and also for a team that should be at least bowl bound in some way, shape, or form, yeah, you've always got an eyeball somewhere.
You do.
You do. And really, even, let's take another step. Dylan Gabriel,
Yep.
who's been around for 10 years. Dylan Gabriel was fantastic at Oklahoma last year, but his OC leaves to be a head coach, and now he's like this, maybe I need to look and see what else is going on because my last year of eligibility, because I want to show the NFL folks this, that, or the other. I don't know if I want to stake my last year of eligibility with a new offensive coordinator that I want to. And I see what they did at Oregon for Bo Nix.
Sure.
I think I want to go that route instead of staying at Oklahoma with Seth Luttrell, because, again, Luttrell was a head coach before at North Texas and has been an offensive coordinator. But, again, I've never worked with the guy, right?
Yeah, and you also have the option of going to an instant contender with Oregon, where Oklahoma, we think they're going to be good, but we don't know for sure.
Oh, by the way, how's the offensive line at Oklahoma?
Ooh, it's not.
So if you're Dylan Gabriel, I don't want to get killed. All right, great text, Michael. Appreciate it there on the Firehouse Sub. Text the hour at 803-444-6100. Football, football, football next on the halftime show here on The Game in Columbia, Florence, and Myrtle Beach. Halftime show with Terry Ford and Tyler Head up until 3 on the game. Of course, it's football in the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors. One quick Gamecock note we didn't get to, Tyler, was Tayshawn Alston, 3-star linebacker from Henderson, North Carolina. 6 o'clock tonight. Will be making his announcement. He's taking official visits to South Carolina, Rutgers, North Carolina. Was going to do an official visit to Virginia Tech, but canceled those plans, is now going to make his decision. Now, according to what I'm reading here, he was listed as an edge by On3, but also is being recruited by Clayton White to play linebacker.
Yeah, and based on, Wes and Chris's observation on this, they feel pretty good about South Carolina's chances with him.
And again, 3-star, the number 602nd overall prospect, number 51 edge in the country, considered the number 14th prospect in the state of North Carolina. And, of course, South Carolina already has 2 linebackers committed in 2025, Jaquel Holman and A.J. Holloway.
Mm-hmm.
So we will find out tonight at 6 what Alston is going to do. All right. I always find this entertaining and sad all at the same time.
Okay.
The city of Charlotte, their city council last night, in a 7-3 vote, okayed the terms of taking $650 million of public money and investing it into the Bank of America Stadium. It's a 30-year-old stadium. Does it need renovation and work? Sure. It's 30 years old.
Right.
At 30 years old, I need a renovation and work. I understand. But it's a 7-3 vote. And from the stuff I was reading and watching online, it was a contentious type meeting. Some folks didn't like the lack of transparency in this whole situation. Some people didn't like the idea that the public didn't have more of a voice. And some people just didn't want to give David Tepper the money for the state to work on the stadium because they don't like Tepper.
Right.
Now, I also I think it's funny, not in a funny ha-ha way, but a funny just the way our world works way with all this stuff. So Tepper, last time I checked, is one of the richest human beings on the face of the earth.
Yes, it seems that way.
This thing's going to cost about $1 billion, if not more, before it's over with.
Right.
The city puts in $650 million. The bazillionaire puts in $150 million. Somebody want to help me out with that?
That math doesn't add up.
And I have always been, on a fundamental level, I always want to look at these guys like Tepper.
Sure.
And say, why don't you pony up the money to fix the stadium you play in, Chief?
Well, here's the thing. You know how rich people stay rich? By not spending their money.
Exactly. And I always find it, and again, because I lived this as a kid, watching these owners basically bully cities with that whole idea that I'll move.
Oh,
I'll move.
That is forever the leverage card that they put in their back pocket. I can't think of an owner that hasn't used that to some degree when it comes to these stadium conversations.
I remember years ago, mid-90s-ish,
Yeah.
the Denver Broncos, there was talk of building a new stadium in Denver, and they have it now. But this was Old Mile High was the stadium, and again, Old Mile High was old.
Yeah.
But there was talk that if Denver didn't pony up the dough to build a new stadium, well, you never know about keeping the team in Denver. And here's the thing that killed me. I remember hearing this. There are very few fan bases, especially at that time, that was more passionate about a football team than the people in Denver about their Broncos, right?
Right.
So what you do is you threaten them.
Sure.
And you're hoping the city will then open up their bank vault to build you a new stadium.
Well, let's get one thing straight right here. Owners could give less of a crap about their fan base.
They don't care, man.
If you need a shining example of that, look at the Chargers. The Chargers had a very passionate fan base in San Diego. They couldn't get a new stadium out of the city. Said, you know what? We're going to go to Los Angeles where people could care less. People don't know the Chargers exist in Los Angeles. They're like the 8th most popular team within their own city. You know what I mean? But They got the new stadium as a part of the deal with the Rams, obviously. Spanos can never go back to San Diego again, or they would put him up on a stake and,
Which I kind of
parade
wish
him
they
around
would.
town. Yeah. But again, they couldn't give less of a crap about that fan base. It's all about the money. It's all about the new stadium, and that's why they're in LA. And again, a stadium or a team like the Panthers in Charlotte, they don't care about the fan base, which whatever little part of the fan base they have left for how bad they've been. It's all about the money. It's all about getting a new stadium.
David Tepper could give a bleep about that entire city.
Sure.
He doesn't care. He could care less. And I'm going to get to that, like some of the stuff in this article in a second. And it's your San Diego example is great. And we'll even go up the road. Oakland.
Yeah.
How about that fan base? There are very few fan bases in America more invested than the city of Oakland in the Raiders.
That's
they
true.
dress up like road warriors, for the love of God,
Exactly.
and sit in the stadium and commit felonies.
They packed out your god-awful Oakland Coliseum that hasn't been fit for football in 30 years to watch your terrible team play for so many years.
And this is what you do to them. You've not only slapped them once when you went to L.A., then you came back to slap them again to go to Vegas.
Yeah.
So slapping them once wasn't enough.
Yeah.
You slapped them a second time.
Which when you're going to Las Vegas, you don't have a passionate fan base. You're going to get people that are saying, hey, my team's playing in Las Vegas. Let's go make a trip out there this fall.
Or this, hey, we've gambled, we hit the buffet, and I went to the Bunny Ranch. Let's go to a Raider game.
Sure. You're like the third most entertaining thing to do out there.
And look, I get it. It's not just Mark Davis and the Raiders. The city of Oakland also screwed this thing up. I get it. It's not, put it this way, there's a long line of people who screwed this up.
Right.
Multiple times. But the bottom line is what I'm saying is, and what we're saying is, fans pay the price for this.
Yes.
Because now the fans in Oakland don't have a football team that they love deeply. In San Diego, they have a football team that they love deeply. And that's what happens here. And let's circle it to Charlotte now. David Tepper has done a nice job of kicking this fan base in the lower extremity since he bought the team.
Multiple times.
This guy he's trying, it feels like, to get into that territory that only the worst of the worst are at. Now, you're not going to get the Daniel Snyder territory because that goes past bad football.
Yeah. Yeah, and hopefully he never comes close to that.
No, that's a lot of bad in many ways.
He has some characteristics that could be similar, but we've not gotten to that point yet.
Basically, and I'm in this article, when you read it, this is what gets me, is that with this deal, I want to find it so I can read it exactly. This deal states that the terms approved Monday include a 20-year non-relocation agreement for both teams. That's a soccer team as well. But they could leave as early as 15 years as long as Tepper Sports pays the remaining city debt associated with the renovation deal. The remaining 5 years are considered as a quote-unquote soft tether. You have to put this in the deal. Think about it. You have to protect yourself as a city council and a city with a 20-year non-relocation agreement. Basically, you've got to, in writing, have this guy say he will not move the team for 20 years. Think about like, for example, any contract, or heck, you get married and that's in the vows now. And, like you just got married a little bit over a year ago. How about if the wife looked at you and said, can we put a vow in here that says that you'll stay faithful to me for 2 years?
I was going to say, I think the original agreement was supposed to be a lifetime, but yeah, I guess.
I mean, think about that's what you put in this thing. You put this in the agreement.
Right.
That's how bad you think of this guy.
Sure.
And this is the vibe this guy has given you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think we can all see he's kind of a slime ball for everything that he's done up to this point. So I wouldn't be surprised if he, went behind the backs of the city of Charlotte and tried to work something out with a different city if they did not agree to what he wanted to. And I don't think there'd be many people in the Charlotte fan base that would be upset if he decided to sell the team to somebody else just to keep it in Charlotte. But again, he's got control as of right now, and at least for the foreseeable future, the Panthers aren't going anywhere.
It's just really sad you got to put this agreement in your deal, not a non-relocation agreement. It's
Right.
kind of sad. But again, this is just me reading. Like, I'm looking at the Charlotte Observer right now, and I've read some other things. I haven't been boots on the ground in Charlotte for this thing every day.
Right.
Maybe there's stuff I'm missing, but from what I've read, again, the people in Charlotte aren't 100% down with this, but they know you got to swallow hard sometimes,
Right.
and you got to drink the skunky medicine to get what you want.
Right.
So, all right, let's grab a call real quick. 803-446-100. Get Todd in here. Todd, thanks for holding on. You're on the halftime show. How you doing, man? You're on the game.
Thank you. It's actually Tom, but that's okay. I was listening to y'all talk about the situation in Charlotte, and I don't want to defend a billionaire, but there's a couple of things I think need to be kept in mind. Number one, almost every tax that an elected body passes is going to be extremely unpopular amongst the people as a whole.
Sure.
And what the elected officials have a responsibility to do is maybe look beyond what the population themselves prefers and take a bigger look at the bigger picture, the long-term implications of doing something like this. I mean, you come from Baltimore, so you know what it's like when you lose your NFL team, what it does to a city.
Yep.
Think of St. Louis right now. Think of San Diego right now. And just think of how the overall quality of life, in a very substantial way, can be decimated for much of the population if you lose your football team.
Todd, I'll give you a point. I'll give you a point even more. You're talking about like life of the quality of life of the people there without having a team. I'll go another point deeper. The revenue you lose by losing those 8 Sundays or Mondays or whatever, that's a lot of revenue. So you're almost being held hostage by this idea that if you want to be looked at as a major league town, you need major league sports.
Right. And, the merchandise and everything. I think the other thing for what I understand about the tax is coming from hospitality and restaurants. So it's not a tax on personal income or property, and so much of it will be absorbed by non-Charlotte residents. It's just the reality, good or bad, right or wrong. You've got to play this game with these owners, which it surprised me when the NFL actually put not one but 2 teams in Los Angeles, because I don't know how long y'all have been around, but there was talk very early in the Panthers' history before Tepper that if the Panthers didn't get a stadium upgrade and all that, they were going to move to Los Angeles, which is exactly what St. Louis did, right? So didn't the Rams go? Yeah, they were in St. Louis, right?
Yeah, they went from L.A. to St. Louis and back to L.A. Yes.
yeah, and before that, there was talk of the Panthers being that team taking that up. So
absolutely. Todd, I do appreciate your call. We got to hit a break, and you're right.
Okay,
that's the game you play with this, because you don't want to lose major league sports.
No, not at all. And he brings up an interesting point there with the original threat of maybe taking the Panthers to LA back in the day. Which city has been threatened more times with taking a team to Los Angeles or San Antonio?
Oh, it's a leverage play.
Yeah.
That's all it is. I was getting ready to say, Todd's right, but almost every team dealing with a stadium issue over the last 15 years, the threat has been, well, we'll just move to L.A. Or San Antonio, like you said.
If I had a nickel for every team that said they were going to go to San Antonio, I could probably buy the Panthers.
So Todd's right. It's the dancing game you unfortunately have to play because you want to be a major league city, and part of that's having major league sports.
Sure.
Now, and the hospitality leaders, they rallied in support of this. So yes, it is a hospitality tax. You're not getting taxed more for something that you buy as an everyday citizen. But still, for me, the idea that you have these guys who are billionaires and they hold cities hostage because they know it's in the city's best interest to keep the team. And now everybody wants a fancy stadium with fancy bells and whistles, which I get. But again, it just always, to me, is slimy. It just is. And I lived it multiple times being from Baltimore. All right, we'll get back in here. Football in the 1 o'clock hour. We're going to hear from Seth Emerson from The Athletic next, talking some college football on the game. Football in the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors. Really quick, one other thing before we move on, Tyler, from the whole stadium issue in Charlotte. Why this is important, and another reason why it makes you kind of throw up a little in your mouth, is if you look at the teams that relocate, it's about stadiums.
Of course.
That's all it is. It's about ballparks and stadiums. The Raiders moved to Vegas. Not about the fan base, stadium.
Yep.
Chargers moved out of San Diego. Not the fan base, stadium.
Yep.
Rams move out of St. Louis over stadium.
Yep.
Well, and the number 2 media market in the country that was vacant.
That helps.
You look around the country, like right now, the talk of Tampa, we're talking baseball now, the Rays.
Yep.
It's stadium.
Sure.
It's a dump. It's an airplane hangar with bases. It's awful. I mean, I think Oakland Alameda County is the worst because that was a cesspool with goalposts. But Tampa is awful, too. That thing is terrible.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
Talk to Heath one day. Our buddy Heath Klein Heath will get red in the face talking about the stadium issue in Tampa. And the fact it's in St. Pete, by the way. It's not even in Tampa.
Yeah.
So every time a team moves now, it's about stadiums. Mm-hmm. Everybody wants the bells and the whistles, the luxury suites, all the little things that bring extra added revenue streams to an organization or a franchise or whatever it is.
Yeah.
It's always stadiums now. Real quick, because people in Baltimore, ever since the Colts left, were paranoid about anyone leaving. And there was a little thing about the Orioles possibly going to Nashville in the last couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
But I kept saying to people, no, they're not going anywhere. Well, why? Camden Yards. Camden Yards is a jewel of a ballpark. It was the original of all these ballparks.
Yep.
Major League Baseball is not moving a team out of that stadium. That's why I can't. Now, if you have the old ballpark, the old Memorial Stadium, which, God love it, was a dump,
Sure.
then your team could move. So if your team has a fancy stadium or is building a fancy stadium, they're going nowhere.
For at least 15 years.
Until you have to rebuild. Well, Atlanta rebuilds stadiums every 10 years. That's what Atlanta does.
That's the thing is the shelf life of these stadiums is getting shorter and shorter too, where now you build one, hey, it's got all the bells and whistles. Well, guess what? In 10 years, it's going to be like the 12th most unique stadium in your respective leagues. So then you're going to be having this conversation all over again.
We talk about the arms race in the SEC about ballparks. Founders was the jewel, right?
Sure.
And now Founders, everybody tells me that knows a lot more than me. It's sort of middle of the pack now.
Well, now everybody with this new land development is like, all right, we got to build a new ballpark down there.
Right.
It's like, wait a minute, what about this one?
That's the way this works now. It's a constant arms race. But if you have an antiquated stadium that doesn't have luxury suites or the bells and the whistles that today's modern owner wants to, find multiple streams of revenue through their stadium and ballpark and to get people to come in and watch games now, because that's a thing.
Right.
If I can sit home with my HD and my own food, my own beer, in my own house, you got to now give me a reason to lift my butt off my recliner and come to your stadium/ballpark.
Well, and that's the thing. It has nothing to do with what happens between the painted lines. The product on the field is the last box to check in all this. It's like, okay, do you have a suite? Can I go sit in a bar and still be able to watch the game? What kind of food do you have there? Can I buy a 3-foot-long hot dog in your facility? You know what I mean? Do I have a seat with a heated, backrest on it or something? Like it's all these bells and whistles and nuanced things that have nothing to do with the actual game that's going to get played on the field in front of you.
You got a pool in Jacksonville and in Arizona.
Yeah.
A pool. You can put on your swim trunks and go swim at the game.
Sure.
Think about it. And you talk about the food. The goofy stuff now. You talk about the 3-foot-long hot dog. Yeah, it's the bun is made out of a glazed donut.
Right.
I mean, everything is to enhance this experience. And by the way, how much of this is cheap?
None.
No. So that's the point. If you got to have a stadium and a ballpark. You got to have the bells and whistles, and you've got to renovate it every 10 years, roughly.
Right.
So, all right, Seth Emerson was talking to Paul Feinbaum. Of course, Seth does great work covering college football for The Athletic. Seth was talking about topics for upcoming SEC Media Days. And here's Seth Emerson with Paul Feinbaum talking about SEC Media Days in July.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think I speak for myself also, where it seems I've just been writing about these off-field and the business of college sports topics for months, basically the entire offseason. And it's hard to avoid it because it's what's happening. It's what's going on, and it's so important. and events are changing, especially with the House settlement. But, you know, I do want to talk football, and I do want to talk on the field, and maybe there will be big events between now and Dallas that we'll have to talk more about things and ask the coaches about these things. The roster limits and walk-on situation could still be up front. There could be movement on that between now and Dallas. But I think for the most part, it'll be a little refreshing. It'll be good to get back to talking about who's your quarterback, which players, you know, which freshmen do you have look good, even, you know, which transfers look good. And maybe we'll start arguing over who's going to be, is it going to be Texas or Georgia that gets picked to win the SEC or someone else? Who are the 3 or 4 or 5 most likely teams in the SEC to make the playoffs? Because I think there's also, Paul, this realization that we're about to enter this just hugely new situation. There's no divisions in the SEC anymore. We're not going to pick SEC West winner, SEC East winner. We're going to pick one. But beyond that, you're going to have the playoff. And it's a 12-team playoff now. And how many can you go 9-3 and still make the playoff? And that kind of stuff is going to be refreshing. I think it's going to be good for us to be able to talk about those kind of things rather than, you know, revenue sharing.
Yeah, it's always nice to talk about the actual on-the-field stuff.
Yeah, that'll be about the first time we've done that from a national perspective when it comes to college football, really this calendar year, because of everything that's transpired off the field. But yeah, that's when we'll get into, okay, who's your starting this, who's your starting that, what do you think your schedule, all that kind of stuff. And we're less than 3 weeks away from that right now.
Look, I get most fans could care less about House versus the NCAA and care less about revenue sharing and care less about all this off the field highfalutin mumbo jumbo about dollars and money and spreadsheets and conference realignment and, you know, power league's going to separate from the rest. Can we just talk about the game?
Right.
Please?
Right.
Can we talk about the game? But all this stuff is important that leads to what happens on the field with the game. And look, as much as we get tired of talking about it, it trickles down, right?
Right.
You know, crap runs downhill.
Here's the thing. As a football coach in Division I, the last thing you're going to care about is court cases. The last thing you want to be caring about is how your student athlete's going to get played. You just want to focus on the X's and O's. But again, being the CEO of the organization, you got to dip your toes into all these avenues because it affects how you do your business.
Right. And that's the world we live in and we're going to be living in moving forward. Unfortunately, there's a lot more of this off-the-field mumbo-jumbo that's going to affect the on-the-field mumbo-jumbo before it's over with.
Right.
We're getting another Seth Emerson cut as he talks about coaches to be concerned about in the SEC. That'll be the next segment. Of course, Emerson was on with Paul Feinbaum. That's coming up next as we do football here in the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors. Craft Beer Card is back. If you like craft beer, this is a deal, man. All right, you got 12 different craft beer locations in the Midlands. You get to spend $30 at each of them. You take 12 times 30, $360. I know that because they wrote it on the paper here. On a video stream. So they wrote it on this paper. So $360 worth of beer, craft beer, you can get for $79. That's a deal. Just go to 1075thegame.com, click on Sweet Deals, then click on the Craft Beer Passport, and have at it. Craft beer away. And like we said, we can have Jay and Elijah go with you to help you in your craft beer journey. They'd be more than willing to be your guide. All right, it's Craft Beer Card, 1075thegame.com. Click on Sweet Deals. Come back, more Seth Emerson on Paul Feinbaum, talking about coaches that should be concerned in this upcoming SEC season. That's next halftime show. Terry Ford, Tyler Head here on The Game. Oh, what you're talking about, what we're talking about. Today, so far, talk some Gamecock stuff with recruiting, transfer portal, the flip of Cutter Woods from Wake Forest to South Carolina, the 3-star quarterback, 2025 class. Also, a couple of additions in the transfer portal for Gamecock baseball, a Clemson outfielder flipping, and a pitcher from the University of Miami. We've gotten into that, talk about the situation in Charlotte with the stadium. And now we're focusing on back to college football. Seth Emerson on with Paul Feinbaum yesterday. We just played Seth discussing the off-the-field world that we've been dealing with and how nice it'll be at SEC Media Days to talk about on the field again. And now here's Seth Emerson talking about coaches to be concerned about in the SEC for 2025.
Well, I think Arkansas, you mentioned, I covered Sam Pittman here first 4 years, I think it was, at the Kirby Smart era at Georgia, and everyone loves Sam, and I think a lot of people were rooting for him. But, it's whenever you have an athletic director have to release a statement saying that the coach is coming back for another year, you kind of put that coach front and center as the one on the biggest hot seat entering next year. That's no secret. And beyond that, you just wonder about, how much is this league going to swallow people up? Billy Napier is going to be somebody that a lot of people talk about. That's an interesting test case on the revenue sharing part of it, and does it have an effect on schools? I don't remember the number off the top of my head, but I think Billy Napier would be a big buyout for Florida. Does that give Florida a lot of pause if Florida has a tough start? Like they open against Miami, that one right away could get the wolves at the gate there. That's another layer to this, Paul, that just makes this such an interesting year with all these changes and gives us a lot to write about. And you start to adjust expectations too. It's a 16-team conference. I think ultimately it is going to be over like a 4 or 5 year period. Everyone, maybe not Vanderbilt, but everyone will be judged on, did you over that 4 or 5 year playoff make the playoff once or get close? But within this year, we're going to see the first year of that, if that makes sense. And you're going to like Missouri and Ole Miss. I think those are two very intriguing programs. How close do they get? Can they even get in the playoff? It's going to make for a lot of intrigue, but man, 12-team playoff may sound like a lot, but ultimately, I think in a good year, the SEC probably gets at most 4 teams in. And there's 16 teams in the league, so that means 12 teams basically have disappointing years.
I think it's interesting what Seth said about, teams in the SEC making the playoffs once in a cycle. And I guess for a lot of schools, they would look at it that way. I mean, the good news about the expanded playoff is, for us fans, we get to see more playoff games, right? The good news for coaches is there's more opportunity to make the playoff. Here's the bad news. It's an expanded playoff. So it also gives your athletic director / president / alumni / fan base more opportunity to go, dude, playoffs expanded. We haven't made the playoff yet. Maybe we need a new coach. So there's good and bad to it. And at the end of the day, I believe, and I hate to say it because I love Uncle Sam at Arkansas. Like Seth said, everybody loves Sam Pittman. We went over the schedule a week or two ago. Sam might not make it through the year. There's a couple of really rough spots in the Arkansas schedule. Billy Napier has a better chance to make it through the year, but the last, 5-6 games for Florida are like just a minefield of losses. And if Billy struggles, remember, Florida didn't win another game last year after they beat South Carolina in a game South Carolina should have won. So if Napier goes on another roll where he goes on a losing streak to end the season, there's no way he comes back for year 4. I just don't see it. Yeah, the buyout isn't going to be small. I'm reading this right now. Billy Napier came to Florida in 2022 with an initial salary of $7.1 million. That salary set to increase by $100,000 each of the 7 years his contract runs through. So if Napier is earning 7.2 in 2023, it'll be 7.3 in 2024, and so on and so forth. In total, a 7-year deal worth almost $52 million. If Napier is fired without cause, and without cause means you just didn't win, Florida be forced to pay him 85% of what remains on the contract. 85% of the salary. So let's say Napier goes through 2024 and Florida craters at the end. They would have to pay roughly 85% of what's left on the deal. So that's not cheap. To Seth Emerson's point, that's some money that Florida will have to pay out to kick Napier to the curb to start over again. To get the next guy they're going to hire, everybody's going to scream to fire him a weekend because they didn't like the press conference because he had a booger hanging out of his nose. Because that's Florida. So it'll be very interesting to see where this goes at Florida with Billy Napier, because we've gone over this schedule multiple times. It might be the toughest schedule in the SEC. Because you add those non-conference games with Miami and Florida State, and also you got Central Florida, who right now might be better than you. They're returning at Central Florida, I think I saw 80% of the offense. And Gus Malzahn's a good coach. Arkansas is probably regretting running Gus Malzahn off after what's happened since Malzahn's left. They've had one good year when they won 9 games, and that's been it. The rest of it's been... And Gus is doing a nice job of slowly building a program at Central Florida. So we'll see what happens. I feel like Sam Pittman might not make it through the season. Napier might survive. But if Florida is as bad as they could be with this schedule, if Gainesville wants to get rid of Billy Napier, they'll have to sign a pretty large check. So we'll see where all that goes. But it will be interesting with the idea of this expanded playoff. We just automatically think there's going to be 3-4 SEC teams in there. Just automatically, the SEC is going to be well represented because they've been well represented in the 4-team playoff. But that kicks your expectation level all over this conference. Almost every athletic director outside of Vanderbilt is going to expect his football program at some point in a 10-year cycle to make the college football playoff.
Well, it's more wide open now than it's ever been. Yeah. And, I mean, theoretically, if you're a top 5 team in the SEC, you should be a de facto, if not in the playoff, right there on the cusp. Mm-hmm. And then the second level of teams, the expectation is going to be, well, eventually you're going to fall into a college football playoff berth, right, head coach? You would think. So that's where, look in Starkville right now. Obviously, unfortunately, Mike Leach passed away. Then you had the unfortunate season that Mississippi State football went through last year, right? So now you go get Jeff Lebby. Jeff Lebby's coached as many games as a head coach in college football as David Ayer. The expectation level, though, in Starkville, Mississippi, is at some point in the Jeff Lebby era, you'll be knocking on the door of the college football playoff. That's the hope. That you wouldn't have hired him if you didn't think so. Exactly. Yeah. The hope here in Columbia, South Carolina, with an expanded playoff, is at some point, Shane Beamer's team is going to be knocking on the door of a college football playoff berth. Again, you wouldn't have hired him if you didn't think so. Outside of Vanderbilt, every other program in this conference. But even at Vanderbilt, there's that, glimmer of optimism. But here's the thing. You don't hire someone if you don't think there's a chance. Because, again, Clark Lee, he comes from Notre Dame. Comes from a program that had been to the college football playoff, that had a winning tradition when he was there under Brian Kelly. There is a glimmer of hope that one of these years they're going to strike gold, whether that be a Cam Newton in the transfer portal or whatever it may be, or they go on some kind of run. They don't have to go undefeated. 9-3. That should be good enough to get you in the... And I'm not saying it's going to happen, but there has got to be some semblance of belief there that they can pull that off, right? Look at you going Lloyd Christmas. Are you saying there's a chance? Hey, 1 in a million. It's not no, right? Oh, man. So you're saying even poor Clark Lee, eventually they're going to go, Clark! They have got to believe it, right? I'm going to say this. Now, Clark Lee's not going to get fired based on his merit of making the playoff or not. It's going to be win-loss record. But I can guarantee if he made the college football playoff at Vanderbilt,
He'd be there
lifetime
the
contract.
rest of his life. He would have to croak on the sideline to lose the job.
They would hang a banner for that.
No doubt. No doubt. Look at you, even poor Clark Lee. You put the bullseye on Clark Lee. Nice work. All right, football. The 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors. Firehouse Sub Text the Hour is coming up next. Halftime show with Terry Ford and Tyler Head till 3 on the game. All righty. Before we get to the Firehouse Subtext the Hour, just to wrap up our little Twitter poll from yesterday, Tyler, at 1075 The Game on Twitter X. Basically, the poll, we had a little fun with it. It was based on their respective fan bases, because we talked about the Tennessee and A&M fan bases.
Yep.
Look, every fan base has got their share of interesting folks.
Sure.
But it feels like the A&M and Tennessee fan base have more than normal.
A few.
Based on their respective fan bases, who would you rather see in the College World Series, win the College World Series? Tennessee, Texas A&M, or we put a third choice, would you rather just see a meteor hit the stadium and nobody wins?
Please tell me Meteor won.
Meteor at 51% of the vote won.
All right.
Yes. Second was A&M at 38%, and 11% took Tennessee. So
Well,
thank you very much for participating.
Meteor let us down last night, unfortunately.
Yeah, I was rooting for Meteor. Don't get me wrong. If you're one of the almost 240 folks who voted, or almost 3,000 people who viewed our little Twitter poll, thank you very much.
I should have put the option as Fireball because it was hot last night in Omaha.
Yes, it was.
The temperature on the field at the start of the game was 104 degrees.
People don't realize, if you've never been to the Midwest, yeah, we talk about the Midwest being cold, or the Midwest having this or that. Midwest gets humid sometimes.
The Midwest experiences every extreme version of weather over the course of a year.
When I was living in Wisconsin for 2 years, froze my tail off, but also that 1 week of summer,
Yeah, it's brutal.
100% humidity. It's crazy. So, yeah, Midwest will have these little pockets of heat, but they just don't have it as long as, like, here in the
Yeah,
South.
because ours lasts from, May to October.
Yes, theirs lasts for like 3 days.
Yeah,
So,
a little more bearable.
all right, our Firehouse subtext, the hour at 803-404-6100. What you got, man?
So when Nameless Texter weighs in, this is in reference to Seth Emerson on the upcoming topics at Media Day. He says, Jay says, hell no, I've got a fever. The only cure is more revenue sharing, implying that Jay enjoys talking about the revenue sharing and new models of college football, which you're not wrong.
No, our boy likes certain rabbit holes a lot.
He does.
And that one, because Jay is very interested in the rabbit hole of the future model of college athletics.
We have spent entire episodes on it.
Yes, we have. We appreciate the text, and really, but what it does, as much as we don't like, look, would I rather talk about games or talk about this stuff that I have to read and look up on because it's stuff that I'm not typically smart enough to read, and I've got to study up on it.
Right.
Of course, I don't like this stuff. I'd rather just talk about ball.
Right.
It's more fun. But this is where the world of college athletics is going, and it does affect on the field. Like, for an example, I have people who have asked me about the recruiting because not a lot. There's a part of this fan base that is quite concerned that South Carolina getting a lot of 3 stars.
Mm-hmm.
Few 4 stars, but no 5 stars yet, and a lot of 3 stars. First of all, the recruiting cycle has a long way to go still.
Yes.
But there are folks, and the first thing they say is it NIL? Can't they afford the upper level kid now?
Mm-hmm.
Well, what the hell's going on? How's this going to affect South Carolina moving forward? What are we going to do? I mean, blah, 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 and they get paranoid.
Right.
So that's the point of the off-the-field things conceivably affecting the on-the-field things. Because NIL, guess what? Ain't going away.
Nah.
And you've got to understand that. Whether you like it or not, it doesn't matter. You have to embrace it. And you have to make the most of it to leverage your athletic programs for success moving forward. Because kids, look, that's why Nick Saban left. Nick was like, first thing a kid says to me, how much money am I getting? That's the world we live in now. And you have to adapt to it as a university. And if not, you're going to get left behind, and it's going to be ugly. I remember I was reading a thing about Wichita State basketball a couple months ago. Yeah, I have no life. And they were talking about the NIL space has really hurt Wichita State basketball.
Mm-hmm.
Because Wichita State basketball, remember, they went to a Final Four under Greg Marshall.
Yeah.
They were undefeated and a number 1 seed in basketball under Greg Marshall. And they've fallen into mediocrity, and a lot of people think, if not the only reason or the number 1 reason or one of the biggest reasons, is they just haven't been competitive in the NIL space. So it's a thing, and it can knock your program back, man.
Right.
You've got to, Southern Cal finally got the religion because they were behind in the NIL space because they were sitting around going, NIL, we're Southern Cal.
I was going to say, they thought the brand was enough. It's not.
Not anymore. Kid doesn't care about your brand. You know what a kid cares about? 3 things. NIL, winning big, and going to the NFL.
That's right.
You got to check boxes. And one of those boxes now is NIL. That's just where it's at. So those are the kind of things that we have to blab about that has to do with off the field that eventually will affect on the field. As much as we don't want to talk about House versus the NCAA and antitrust laws, and we become antitrust lawyers.
I know more about it than I care to.
We had our one lawyer buddy call up here who was quite helpful.
That's right.
Hey, he has an open phone. He can call anytime he wants to give us knowledge.
I got his number saved. If we need to pick his brain, we can.
We loved him. So thanks for the text. We appreciate it. And hit us up again next hour. Our Firehouse Sub text the hour at 803-404-6100. What is trending at 2? That is coming up next. Sponsored by our pals at Gamecock Traditions and Traditions Fine Jewelry. It's a halftime show with Terry Ford and Tyler Head till 3 on the game.
Mic 4 works or not. Can you hear it? Here?
Yeah, look at it. Hit it again. Turn it off and turn it back.
Okay. How about now? Anything at all? Okay.
He needs a strike. Burton needs a bolt. Swing and a miss. And for the first time, Rocky Top reaches the mountaintop of college baseball. They are the World Series champions.
Carl Ravitch there with his little Rocky Top has reached the mountaintop. With Tennessee winning the College World Series, beating Texas A&M. Were you down with that one? There were people on the old internet thought that was pretty clever.
I mean, that was good. I'm sure he practiced it in the mirror several times. You have to, when you're calling a championship game, you have to have some kind of signature to it.
Yeah.
Because that is going to be, whether it's replayed just nationally or within that fan base over and over and over and over and over again, you want to cement your place in it some kind of way.
Yeah, I mean, myself as a fan, I could care less about that moment. But as a broadcaster, you're right. It's going to be your chance. And Carl Ravitch knew this was going to be his chance to have a call that will be for all time be in the broadcaster vault, right?
Exactly.
So you want to have something.
I would say, is it an all-time classic? No, not necessarily, but it's clever. I see what you're doing there.
It ain't up there with Do You Believe in Miracles?
No,
but
it's not that. Okay. There's countless number of other ones that are going to rank a whole lot higher than it, but solid. And I think the Tennessee fan base certainly appreciates that. Now, what would he have said if A&M had won is my question. Well, what can you do with A&M or Aggies or 12th Man or something of that effect?
He was probably hoping Tennessee won because his one for Tennessee was probably much better than his one for A&M. Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I can't even think of anything good with A&M.
No. All right, so first of all, Dylan Dreiling was phenomenal in this series. Was a College World Series MVP, hit a big bomb last night to extend the lead out to 5-1. Dreiling also homered, he homered all three games, right?
That's right.
So Dylan Dreiling was really big for Tennessee in the win. The Tennessee starting pitching, went over this earlier. Let me move my notes again. Drew Beam, and, man, my handwriting is awful. Xander Sechrest combined for 9 1/3 innings, only 2 earned runs. So both starting pitchers in Game 2 and Game 3 for Tennessee slammed the door on A&M early. And so it was just, again, Volunteers, first #1 seed to win this thing since Miami, the first #1 seed since they went by seeding the tournament the way they do now.
Right.
It's been over 20 years, so it's been a long time. So we give the Vols their props. Here's Tony Vitello, still, like last time we checked, the head coach of Tennessee. Here's Vitello talking postgame.
They're fun. Loss of voice and emotion, too. They're fun, but also, it's like kids are tough these days. These guys will do whatever you ask them to do. I don't really know what happened the last pitch, but I know our fans got us through that tough inning. I guess we were intentionally giving them a couple runs or whatever Combsy was doing, but that was a group effort on the mound. Frank did an unbelievable job. It's an incredible group of guys. The team chemistry. Just be a good teammate if you're listening. If you're in the SEC, you're going to be a superstar player, but you need to be a good teammate, and that's what these guys were.
It's interesting Vitello said that, and some people, of course, Vol Twitter, being Vol Twitter, ran with something interesting last night.
Yes.
You're celebrating your first national championship in a long time.
In this program history.
I'm just talking about in general at Tennessee.
What, 15, 16 years?
As much as you fancy yourself a top-level athletic department, this is the first championship you celebrated in a long time.
Sure.
The first baseball championship you've ever celebrated.
Right.
So, and again, what percentage of fan? Not a big percentage, but this is why we had our little Twitter poll yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
There were people, a percentage of all Twitter, instead of celebrating this moment and maybe dogpiling with their family in the living room, they decided to troll Chase Burns. And if you don't know Chase Burns, he was a starting pitcher last year for the Volunteer team that got to Omaha and lost.
Mm-hmm.
Burns transferred to Wake Forest to go pitch in the pitching lab that Wake Forest has. It's a very high-level, I'm going to call it a pitching department for lack of a better term. Pitching system, pitching process. And Chase Burns wanted to go there to become part of the pitching lab at Wake Forest. And by the way, last time I checked, Wake Forest was also at Omaha last year.
That's right.
So Chase Burns made that decision, and he will be a top 10 or top 5 pick in the Major League Baseball draft. So instead of celebrating your moment, there were a percentage of that fan base that had to go after Chase Burns.
Yes. So I brought this point up earlier, and Dave actually shared a really relatable story where he said he once went to a friend's wedding, and after the ceremony, when everybody's getting up doing the toast at the reception afterwards, the bride got up and proceeded to trash talk her ex about how bad of a person he was and how much better off she is now. And it's like, well, yeah, but shouldn't today be about the guy you just married instead of the guy that was in your life however many years
How
before?
would you like to be the guy that just married her?
Exactly. Like, I'm right here. Like, why are we talking about Joe Schmo from years ago? You know what I mean? Like,
Right. What do we care about that guy?
why not enjoy? Like, Chase Burns made a decision that he felt was the best interest of his career, which, by the way, I don't know if you've checked, he's going to be a top 5 draft pick. So it clearly has worked. Now, yes, Wake Forest did not go as far as he would have hoped they would have gone, but it was a move that he thought was going to benefit him, and it has. And again, it's not like Tennessee suffered because of it. In fact, they're a better team this year without him. So why are you wasting your time instead of celebrating your national freaking championship, wasting your time talking about him?
Wasting your time talking about your ex.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, the thing that gets me is, okay, Tennessee got what they wanted.
Yes.
Chase Burns got what he wanted.
Yes. Why are you mad?
Be happy.
Exactly.
Who cares?
Exactly. And that goes back to something you and I were talking about. This is why people find so many Tennessee fans insufferable, because they take an opportunity like that to go trash somebody that is irrelevant to what is happening right then and there.
Yeah.
I don't think Chase Burns was crying himself to sleep last night. Probably very happy for his former teammates to win the national championship. I'm sure he was rooting them on watching the game last night.
And that is so much it's so much a study in psychosis is what it is. It's, oh, you left me and look how I turned out. Screw you.
Yeah.
See, you shouldn't have left me. That's an inferiority complex that those fans do their best to say they don't have.
It goes back to the bride trashing her ex, because the ex was not there to hear this speech being given, but the hope is somebody's at the wedding's going to tell him, oh, he's gonna know what I said about who. He's gonna be so mad when he hears what I said about him at my wedding. Why do you care? Why does it matter?
You're better off now, right?
Exactly. He's living his life, I'm sure, probably pretty happy too. Why take this opportunity when you should be focused on the good thing happening to you right now to focus on something negative in your past?
Because again, that's part of your psychosis.
I guess so.
It just is. Because, like, for an example, think about you. Or think about most normal folks. When something good happens to them, they focus on the good thing happening to them. They celebrate the good part. They don't go, yeah, or just job.
Yeah.
They don't go, yeah. The first thing they don't think of is this. Oh, yeah, that guy that fired me 5 years ago, flipping him the bird, right?
Exactly.
Screw you,
Like,
dude. Look at me now.
You're happy, enjoying what is taking place right now.
Matter of fact, you were better off. Like Tennessee, probably the way their pitching staff set up, better off the way they did it, possibly without having Chase Burns, as weird as that sounds.
Yeah, so if anything, thank him.
Yeah, because everything kind of laid out the way they did. Remember, they coached that pitching staff a certain way all year.
Sure.
Maybe they would have to coach it different if Chase Burns would have been there. So they say, thanks, Chase, because we kind of did it this way because we had to, because we didn't have a lot of upper-level starting pitchers.
Yeah.
So be happy. Be happy. Sometimes, these things work out the best for everybody.
Yes, exactly.
But this, again, goes back to what we've been talking about. Be happy. Choose happiness.
It's not hard.
Listen to Dr. Terry Ford and Dr. Tyler Head. Choose happiness.
It's not a difficult thing. Just
not.
Enjoy what you've been waiting forever to do, which is win a national championship in baseball.
Yes. And we'll see what happens with Tony Vitello. The Texas gig is open. There's a lot of rumors and smoke saying that Texas will go harsh after Vitello, or Jim Schlossnagle at Texas A&M, or possibly Brad O'Connor at Virginia. So we'll see what goes on. But we figure, Tyler and I just figuring out loud, that whoever gets the Texas gig has a really good chance of becoming the highest paid baseball coach in America collegiately.
Definitely.
So we'll see what happens there. Also, there was another championship handed out last night on the ice in Sunrise, Florida.
The wall, which would be fitting. 3 seconds to go. The Florida Panthers have won the Stanley Cup.
That's it last night, Florida. It was, and if you watched it, you saw one of the craziest 4 minutes you'll ever watch at the end of that game. Edmonton is peppering the net with shot after shot after shot after shot. And Florida basically went like this. We got a 1-goal lead. We're just going to stand in front of the net, and we're going to hold our breath till it's triple zeros on the clock or quadruple zeros on the clock. And it was unreal. The fact that Edmonton did not score at the end is unbelievable. It was such a frenzy in front of the Florida net the last 3 or 4 minutes.
Right.
And all Florida would do is try to clear the puck so the clock would run. And Edmonton would rush back down the ice with the puck. And it was a really good game last night.
Right.
Between Edmonton and Florida. Florida wins. They win the Stanley Cup, avoiding the biggest choke job in the history of professional sports in America.
Yeah, and now we're, 32 years removed from the last time a Canadian team won?
The country that has... No one puffs their chest out more about hockey than the Canadians. And rightfully so.
Oh, sure.
Rightfully so.
It's their sport.
Yes.
But it's so funny that the sport that's fourth on our totem pole,
I know,
in most people's minds, is the one that we continue to win.
I know. That would be like if the Canadians constantly won the gold medal and a Canadian team constantly won the NBA championship.
Oh yeah, like the Raptors when they won a couple years ago. It's like, wait a minute,
this ain't right.
An American team.
This ain't natural. By the way, do you have the cut of Matthew Tkachuk saying, "Thank God St. Louis traded me"? Get that, St. Louis, suck it.
That does not exist.
That does not exist because you know why Matthew Tkachuk was concentrating,
focused on
winning the Stanley Cup with the Florida Panthers.
Yeah, you know what? Similarly, remember Ryan Day last year being so mad at Lou Holtz?
Yeah.
Same kind of situation.
Yeah.
Like, you just won a thrilling game against a Notre Dame team. Yeah. Why are you mad about what Lou Holtz said on the Pat McAfee show?
God love Lou Holtz is he close to 200 now?
Yeah.
I mean, and by the way, he coached Notre Dame.
Yeah.
What's he going to be doing? Come on, man.
And guess what? Ryan Day made himself look like an idiot.
He looked like, he did. He did not look... That was not a good look for Ryan Day.
No,
it just wasn't. So, again, to your point, enjoy your moment. Enjoy your moment. All right, we will get back in here at what's trending at 2. A couple interesting stories to hit. J.J. Redick, his presser as he becomes a Lakers head coach. I was surprised that GM LeBron James wasn't sitting up there with him. Also, Major League Baseball, how many pitchers do you think, before Major League Baseball changed the rules about doctoring baseballs, how many pitchers do you think roughly doctored baseballs? We have a Major League pitcher who gave you kind of a percentage of how many pitchers were doctoring baseballs. Kind of interesting. And you ready for this? We talk about Nick Harbour at 19 years old, how fast he runs. There's a 16-year-old that's running pretty fast in the 400 at the Olympic trials, a high schooler. We'll get into that, too, and what's trending at 2. Sponsored by Traditions Fine Jewelry and Gamecock Traditions. Terry Ford, Tyler Head, up until 3 here on the game. All right, what's trending at 2 here, sponsored by Gamecock Traditions and Traditions Fine Jewelry here on the game with Terry Ford and Tyler Head. I'm going to try to hit a bunch of different stories here in our final segment of what's trending at 2. We will start. This is very cool. Did you see this yet, Tyler? I just saw this pop, and maybe it's been up and I just missed it. B.J. Mack, former Gamecock basketball player, took his name, image, and likeness money, and he opened a barbershop for his dad. House of Hoops Barbershop, scheduled to open June 29th in Charlotte, North Carolina. His dad's been a barber for over 20 years. And so his dad's going to have his own barbershop now. It's pretty cool. Grand opening, by the way, if you need a haircut, grand opening from noon to 2 on Saturday, free haircuts.
Being the first one in line, right?
Oh, I'll jump. It'll take them 22 seconds to cut mine, right? Well, I tell you now, I don't get a haircut anymore. I get a hair's cut.
Yeah.
That's how little my hair I have left.
I mean, have you ever entertained the idea of doing it yourself?
Oh, God, no.
No.
My kid's uncle does it himself because he just kind of shaves it off now.
Sure.
It's not there's dents, there's divots. It's like, no, I'm not doing that myself. There's certain things in life I think I'm going to go to the professional. And right now, like, it's not even a bad haircut now. Like, if I go to a Great Clips or wherever I go and get it cut, I mean, even if it's not the greatest thing in the world, seriously, what am I complaining about, right? It's like I have nothing to complain. I got very little hair to complain about.
That's fair.
I think that's cool with BJ Mack. That's
yeah, no, that's neat.
I just want to throw that out because everybody always talks about name, image, and likeness. And everybody's talking about the selfish side of this and all that. This is a good thing.
I was going to say, when we talk about NIL and these guys making money, I think everybody envisions guys driving Lambos and stuff like that. And are there guys out there that do that? There are, but they are the 1%. A lot of these guys do use this for good, buying your dad a barbershop, helping out families and people in your community, things like that. So it has plenty of good to it as well.
Absolutely. Another Gamecock piece of news. We talked about it earlier. It's decision day for 3-star 2025 linebacker / edge Tayshawn Alston. He'll make his announcement at 6 p.m. At his high school stadium. He's a North Carolina kid, Hendersonville, North Carolina, again, 6 p.m. North Carolina, South Carolina, I believe it's Georgia Tech in that thing as well. But you say, according to Wes and Chris, he's leaning South Carolina.
It sounds like they feel pretty confident he's going to be a Carolina.
Fantastic. All right, NBA. There's a new head coach. It's the Lakers' 29th head coach. It feels like they're 27th in the last 3 years. J.J. Redick is now the head coach of the Lakers. Hit it.
And I take this facility very seriously. I have never coached in the NBA before. I don't know if you guys have heard that.
He had a great line when he was asked about another question. He's like, I don't give a bleep about that.
Sure.
I care about winning championships now or being the best head coach I can for the play, blah, blah, blah. Again, we've talked about this back and forth in the last week or two. Could J.J. Redick be good at this? Sure. Why not? Mark Jackson came out of the TV booth and really started the Warriors of what they became.
Sure.
He made the playoffs with Golden State. Then they felt like they reached a ceiling with Mark Jackson, went and got Steve Kerr. And no, Steve Kerr didn't have any coaching experience, but Steve Kerr was the GM of the Phoenix Suns.
Right.
J.J. Redick has coached his 4th grade kids, whatever.
Yeah.
So could it work? Sure. What the heck? We don't know. But does it feel like it's got a large percentage of success? No. It feels you're basically the optics of this, Tyler. You're hiring LeBron James' podcast buddy.
Right.
That's the optics.
Yeah. So when you look back at things historically and look, guys being hired with no prior head coaching experience in the NBA is not a foreign thing.
No.
In fact, like you said, Kerr, Jason Kidd, Steve Nash, in recent memory, we've had quite a few of those. And again, the Kerrs and the Kidds have been pretty successful so far up to this point. But when you look back at it historically, these guys roughly average around 50% with their winning percentage. A lot of them do end up making the playoffs, but Larry Bird, when he was with the Pacers back in the late 90s, like you do have guys that have been successful with it, but you also have guys that just did not end up working out. So you're kind of really flipping a coin here by doing this, and it could be successful or it could not be. And again, when you are coaching the most popular brand in the NBA with the biggest basketball player in the world in LeBron James, all eyes are going to be on you. And I get it. Like every other player, he understands the X's and the O's of the game, which you hear through his commentary, like when he was on the finals and all that. But coaching's different. Making those adjustments in-game, on the fly, as things are happening, a lot of parts and pieces are moving around you. It's a much, much different game that not everybody can do. I liken this back to, remember a couple years ago when Tony Romo was on commentary for CBS, predicting plays before they even happened? It was like, man, this guy needs to be the head coach of whatever team and here and there. And like, what he's doing in the booth is impressive.
Right.
There's a big difference between predicting a play in the booth and coaching on the field.
Yes,
that doesn't always translate over. So pump the brakes on that a little bit.
Yes, we'll see where it goes. But the optics are LeBron James makes every decision with the Lakers. You know, LeBron is telling everybody we're going to draft our kid in the second round. Not an NBA player, might not ever really be an NBA player, but he will be because his last name's James. The optics of the Lakers, they look like a disaster. Maybe we're wrong, and maybe this will all work out. But just it looks like the Lakers are just, hey, LeBron, what do you want to do today?
Yeah,
it's kind of the way it feels. And
I love that he threw in there the part that, the podcast that we do, we're not going to do that anymore.
Yeah, but I think it would be fun if he did, though, right?
Sure.
Could you see LeBron like talking to him about, hey, JJ, what was that decision in the fourth quarter? Why didn't we call a timeout? What's up, JJ? That was I wanted you to keep doing the podcast.
See, I think that would maybe expose the power dynamic going on that team a little bit too much, which is probably a good idea that they're not going to keep doing it.
All right, Danny Colome is a relief pitcher in the majors. He's pitched for multiple teams. Right now he's with the Baltimore Orioles. And let's get the second cut here, Tyler, because this is the one that's really interesting. Colome was talking about, because Edwin Diaz just got suspended for a sticky substance on his hand, the Mets closer.
Right.
And a lot of pitchers are very upset about the lack of consistency or transparency in this whole thing about the sticky substance on your hand. And they like to have something that has more uniformity to it. Does that make sense?
Right.
And Danny Colome was asked about, before the rules went in place, the foreign substances that pitchers were using. And Danny Colome had an interesting answer, and he gives you an idea of how many pitchers he thought were using foreign substances.
Yeah, it's definitely causing a paranoia. I find it, I was a guy, and Kratz could probably tell you this, before the sticky checks, like I used substances, and, I think I'd say about 80% of the league did. And, trying to figure out how to throw without it. And then if you get caught and you get busted for something that you're not using anymore, it's really frustrating. We know that there's always a few crews that we know are more stringent than others. But realistically, like, I don't know of anybody really using anything. So I guess on our team. So in my opinion, I wish they had like some sort of criteria they could do, but I just don't know how they could enforce that.
My favorite part of that is, nobody on my team's using anything. I swear to God.
He had to throw that in there, but you hear him say about 80% of the league was doing this. Well, I would hope so, because here's my thing: if you're not pushing the limits and trying to get away with it, you're probably not winning. Let's be honest here. If you're not exploiting gray areas in the rule book, you're probably not being successful.
Look, it's the old saying, and people, hey, if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying.
Exactly.
And look, this is why you had to put a rule in place, because everybody was using all this stuff that, it was making the ball dance, and the spin rates were crazy, and it was helping pitchers get an unfair advantage on hitters who they already have enough advantages.
Right.
So, you had to put a rule in place because you're all cheating so much.
Exactly.
But you're going to push it because there were no rules in place.
Yeah.
And I say this all the time. Baseball is a sport that is fundamentally built on cheating.
Yeah.
It has been for over 100 years. You can't get mad over certain cheating and not get mad over other cheating, because baseball has always been covered in cheating.
And when you step over the line, okay, I took it too far, doesn't mean you're going to stop cheating. It just means you're going to maybe dial it back a little bit.
Yeah, or if I do get busted, don't get mad.
Yeah.
Because you got busted. And yeah, it's sort of like the speeding thing. You get pulled over and you're watching dudes go by you at 100. Well, guess what? You're the one that got pulled over. Were you speeding?
Yep.
You were. Oh, well. Live with it. All right, that's what's trending at 2, sponsored by Traditions Fine Jewelry and Gamecock Traditions. I want to get this one in really quick, Tyler, because I don't want to miss this. There's a kid named Quincy Wilson, 16 years old, running the 400 meters of the Olympic trials. Finished 6th. He just missed the Olympic Games at 16. He broke the 42-year-old national high school record in the 400. Kid at 16 just missed the Olympics in the 400.
Wow. That's
How
impressive.
about Quincy? And we look at Harbor, how impressive Nick Harbor is
Right.
as a freshman running track. Here's a teenager in high school, almost made the Olympic team in the 400. Now that's what's trending at 2. Sponsored by Gamecock Traditions and Traditions Fine Jewelry. It's June 25th. Greatest day in the history of the world. Next, here on the halftime show on the game. Greatest day in the history of the world, sponsored by 1-800-GOT-JUNK here on the Halftime Show. Today, the greatest day in the history of the world is June 25th. On this day in 2008, the LA Clippers took some dude named Blake Griffin, number 1 overall in the NBA draft.
Worked out okay.
Yeah, had a good career, had some injuries, kind of shortened everything up for him. I just remember I jumped over a car in a slam dunk competition.
That's right.
A good player. I mean, excellent player for a period of time with the Clippers, with him and with DeAndre Jordan and with Chris Paul. Everybody thought at some point the Lakers could possibly break through and maybe even, God forbid, get to a finals, but they are the Clippers. So they never did. But Blake Griffin had a good career. Good career. On this day in 1997, Wake Forest took Tim Duncan number 1.
That also worked out pretty good.
San Antonio took Tim Duncan number 1 from Wake Forest.
That also worked out pretty good.
And then in 1999, San Antonio won their first NBA championship.
Funny how those things work, huh?
By the way, just an aside, guess who the first ABA team was to win an NBA championship?
First ABA team. No clue.
San Antonio Spurs.
Well, there you go.
That day in 1999. Also on this day in 1997, the NHL approved franchises in Nashville, Atlanta, Columbus, Minnesota, and Minnesota-St. Paul. What happened to that Atlanta franchise?
Oh, for the second time, they lost it to Canada.
But Nashville, Columbus, and Minneapolis-St. Paul still have theirs.
I knew somebody that got a Thrashers tattoo at one point in time. I wonder if they regret that now.
What do they do now? I know they do things. It's much more advanced now how they get rid of those things. Or
yeah, it's like a laser removal. I'm like, I'm sure it costs a lot of money and hurts a lot, but yeah, I'd be weary about sports logos tattoos unless you're just absolutely certain they're never going to go anywhere.
It's like getting a tattoo of your current girlfriend or boyfriend.
Which, like, I mean, the Thrashers had decent support in Atlanta. I knew a lot of people that went to the games, but I wouldn't say Atlanta was rabid about watching the Thrashers, which, again, is why they ended up going back to Canada.
You have any ink?
I do not.
You know, I don't either. And it's not that, but here's my thing. I always wanted to get a tattoo when I was drunk at Ocean City, Maryland.
Sure.
Walking the boardwalk.
How do you know you haven't?
Oh, well, I've checked.
Maybe it's somewhere you can't see.
Well, they won't give you one because your blood alcohol level's so screwed up. I mean, I stumbled into those places. I remember, hey, I want a tattoo. Get out of here, you drunk kid.
Yeah.
Come back when you're sober. When I was sober, the only reason I never got one was what we're just talking about.
Mm-hmm.
What if I want to change it or get rid of it or whatever? Now I got to go through this, whatever I got to do to get rid of it. If all of a sudden I don't want it anymore. Because I used to have the earrings. Like I used to have I had earrings.
Yeah.
And I changed my earrings all the time.
Sure. Well, you know, and you take the earring out, the hole grows back, and, you know.
Like now. Yeah. You've never seen me with an earring.
I've never seen you with an earring.
I stopped wearing them about 10 years ago. I said, okay, I got to stop wearing earrings.
Sure.
I might go back to it one day. One day I might show up here with my earring back in.
You have that option.
That's why I like my earrings.
Yeah. The tattoo is a little bit different.
Yeah. I can get those little kid tattoos that you wash off.
Oh, yeah. We all love those, right? Where you hold the wet rag on it for like 5 minutes.
Okay, if you had to get one tattoo in your life, do you have a thing in your mind if you ever were going to get one, what it would be?
Honestly, no. It'd have to be something with a lot of meaning.
Yes,
for me.
I agree.
I mean, I'm not getting this person gets like a cartoon character on their
I'm not getting the barbed wire on my arm or something. No.
Yeah, I had a friend in high school. He got his last name tattooed on his forearm,
so he could never forget it.
I don't know what his reasoning behind that was, and again, we were still in high school at this point in time. And after he got it, he's like, you know, if I'd really thought about this, I may have put this somewhere else.
Yeah, right. Or like the one you get on your neck when you're 19.
Yeah, that one too. The face tattoos, that's become more of a thing now.
Yeah.
I wouldn't venture into that category.
See, if I got one, I would get it to where like on the upper part of your arm or your back where
cover it up.
It would be covered up if I need it covered up for a reason.
Sure.
If I don't want it covered up, it could be uncovered. But I'm like you, mine would have to be of some special meaning. I want to get it in some. I would want one where someone would go, "Wow, tell me about that tattoo."
Yeah, it's got a story behind it.
Right. I would have to have a story behind it.
Yeah.
Not the girl I spent the weekend with.
Why do you have Homer Simpson drinking beer on your shoulder blade?
And why is he wearing a bikini?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, something that's got to have a story.
That actually has a lot of significance to me, believe it or not.
So, yeah, anyway. Couple of old school deals. Joe Louis, who would have been a future heavyweight champion on this day in 1935, moved to 20-0 with a 6-round knockout of former champion Primo Canera of Italy in Yankee Stadium. And also, 13 years later, Louis also won on this day by knocking out Jersey Joe Walcott to defend his heavyweight title. Joe Louis was a historic, iconic champion. And it's a sad story, Tyler. This happens in a lot of sports, but you really see it in boxing, where these guys, again, they're not accountants. They're not money managers.
Sure.
They are, relying on others to take care of their money for them. And if you don't hire the right others, you can get screwed.
Right.
And Joe Louis was one of those guys, unfortunately, had that situation. He had to fight way past his prime to make money. He just did. And it was sad. Joe Louis, people I've talked to, old school boxing heads, will push back on Muhammad Ali all the time and say, no, the greatest heavyweight they saw was Joe Louis. That's how good he was. Again, I don't know. I wasn't born. My dad wasn't born. So, anyway. And that is the greatest day in the history of the world, sponsored by 1-800-GOT-JUNK. We got to get to this, because I'll forget. I got to get to this. What in God's name was Joe Burrow doing? You saw this, right?
I did.
So Joe Burrow is in some fashion show, some Vogue fashion show. Wasn't Justin Jefferson in it too with him, his former teammate?
Yes, that's correct.
Wide receiver, Vikings, just signed a big deal. So Joe Burrow is in this fashion show. Look, I got no problem with being in a fashion show. Go get him.
Sure.
I had to do this once or twice for radio purposes, as our radio station kind of got into some sponsorship thing with some kind of local fashion show, and we had to get up and walk the runway like goofs.
Did you win?
Oh, I tore it up. Let me tell you what. 2 words: swimsuit.
I didn't need that image in my head. Thanks.
Anyway, so Burrow is in this suit.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, big deal. Joe Burrow walking in a suit. He's being what they call him, Joe Cool and everything. He's got his shades on.
Joe Shiesty.
But then he keeps walking, and you see the back of the suit. And there is no back. It's a backless suit. Think of a woman wearing a backless evening dress.
Yes.
It's a backless suit. Here's my question, sir. Would you ever wear a backless suit?
I would not. Here's my question. Why does fashion have to be weird? Like, like they have the fashion week in Paris or whatever it is, right? Like why does everything that you see end up being something that you would never see people wear? Like, nobody's gonna wear a backless suit to a wedding or to a work function.
How about a job interview?
Exactly.
Go to your job interview in a backless suit.
Where do you wear this at?
You don't.
What is the functional purpose of a backless suit?
You wear it at a Vogue fashion show.
You wear it to make people talk about it.
Yes. Because here's the thing. I always, whenever I see this, I'm like Russell Westbrook wearing the goofy stuff he would wear to a game.
Sure.
If you're not rich, like stupid rich, and you're not wearing these clothes in a situation where other stupid rich people are.
Exactly. If
you wore what Joe Burrow wore in my neighborhood, you would get the hell beat out of you.
Yeah.
Just because they go, who's the weirdo in the backless suit?
But by the way, Justin Jefferson's suit is fully together.
It's fine.
Do you think they played like rock, paper, scissors to see who had to wear the backless one?
Yeah. It's like, hey, Joe, guess what? Scissors cut paper, dude. You got the backless suit. It just, I used to watch, and Russell Westbrook, I don't know if he still does it or not, because you don't get to see as much Russell Westbrook as you used to.
Oh, he still wears the weird fits.
But when he's coming in, I'm like, bro, you can't wear that in the real world.
No.
You just can't. Bad things happen to people who wear that stuff. Oh, backless suit. All right. We'll get back in here. Firehouse sub text the hour, 803-404-6100. Halftime show. Terry Ford, Tyler Head here on the game. All right, two quick things before we get the Firehouse Subtext, the hour at 803-404-6100. Halftime show, Terry Ford, Tyler Head. One of the things last night in the Stanley Cup Final we haven't talked about yet, Tyler, was that when they announced the winner of the Conn Smythe Trophy, it was Connor McDavid of the Edmonton Oilers. Only the sixth time in the history of the NHL that a player from the losing team won the Conn Smythe.
Right.
But what people who don't follow hockey or pay attention to hockey don't understand, that the Conn Smythe is not the MVP of the Stanley Cup Finals. It's the MVP of the Stanley Cup playoffs.
Right, right.
And in that instance, I totally get why Connor McDavid wins it.
Sure.
So, yeah, and I get why the folks in Florida were booing and screaming profanities at the TV, had to be blanked out for a little while they were yelling.
Yeah.
I get it, but if you want to look at it objectively, Connor McDavid, yes, is the MVP of the Stanley Cup playoffs.
Sure.
Not the Stanley Cup Finals, because, again, I get why, if you're a Panther fan, you would want a Panther player to win it for the finals. But if you look at the totality of the playoffs, Connor McDavid was phenomenal. That was one, because I knew I was forgetting about that all day. And two, so my girlfriend sends me this Instagram feed of this guy who puts up tweets from texts from teenagers, real texts from teenagers to their parents.
Okay.
Ready for this one?
Sure.
Real text message from kid to parent.
All right.
Hey, Mom, where is the statute of limitations located?
The
statute of limitations.
Okay.
Because in that kid's mind, it's a real statue. Like the Statue of Liberty. Gotta love kids.
Yeah, that's all right. It's taking it seriously.
I mean, it's a great Instagram reel. It's so good. All right, what we got there? Firehouse Subtext, the hour 803-404-6100.
Yeah, so we talked about the call on ESPN of Tennessee winning the national championship last night, making reference to Rocky Top being on the mountaintop, and Jacob weighs in and says Andy Dimitra, when they won their second national championship in a row back in 2011, that would have been. He said Andy Dimitra, the play-by-play guy at the time, said back-to-back for the Garnet and Black, which that's pretty good.
That's solid. Got a little rhyme to it. Very nice.
Right.
Like I said, for a fan, most of the time we don't care. But as a broadcaster, you want to put your stamp on it. I get it.
Yeah,
Totally do.
Well, like what the Braves radio team, when they won the World Series back in '95, I think that was the yes, just over and over again, which again is a iconic replayed call in the history of Braves baseball.
Absolutely. And again, you remember more of them when it's your team, but on a national level, every now and then one goes through like Al Michaels.
Sure.
With Do You Believe in Miracles? But for the most part, if you're a broadcaster, you just don't want to not have one, I guess. Right?
Right.
So, by the way, just walking into the studio here wearing his backless T-shirt like Joe Burrow.
Yeah.
Jay Phillips.
Is that a true story?
Did you see this yet?
No.
Oh, yeah, Joe Burrow did some Vogue fashion show. Backless suit.
At least the pants were intact.
Thank God the pants weren't backless. Huh. Yeah.
Interesting.
Backless.
No, I missed that.
So
I got to be honest with you, though. Fashion is, despite the line in Die Hard of industrialization in men's fashions, but I could do that all day. But, I have not. It
was interesting. It just came up through my Twitter feed. It's like, and Joe Burrow's walking. He's doing some Vogue fashion show. I'm like, okay, cool.
Sure.
It's Joe Burrow doing a fashion show.
Sure.
Then they show him that he's walking right by the camera, and then there's no back to the suit.
So I have a question because, and Jay, you haven't seen this yet, but he's walking alongside Justin Jefferson, who's in a full suit, no missing back to this thing. Do the suits cost the same price?
Probably.
Because
I'm going to go out on a limb and say Burrow's costs more.
I would
probably
too.
So, because you're talking about significantly less fabric on his, right?
Less fabric, but more tailoring.
Well, I would say this too. I mean, jeez, if you're interviewing people and one guy's got a suit and one guy's got a backless suit, you're obviously going to hire the guy with the backless suit. Come on, duh.
Yeah, well,
right?
Lucky for him, he can sling a football better than
here's
most people on Earth.
There's your icebreaker for the interview, right? Why do you have a backless suit on?
Yeah, I mean, you stand out, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you're the guy in the backless suit.
The answer for a guy like Joe Burrow would be, why not? Or because.
I'm Joe Burrow.
You know what? Joe Burrow's charming enough, you'd still give him the job,
exactly.
right?
Yeah. All right, last night we had a Game 7. We had a winner take all.
Yeah.
Were you watching them both? Would you watch one than the other?
I have watched 3 things because I also watched Brazil and Costa Rica. So it was
nothing in soccer.
Well, for Costa Rica to hold Brazil goalless, that was a big deal. In LA, to me, the crowd was like 90-10. There's 100,000 people there.
Yeah, nothing, Jay.
And Brazil was like, oh, I guess we should have played.
Is the post-game show just going to be Elijah gloating for 3 hours?
I don't know. No, I don't think so. I'm not going to allow that.
So I
don't know how gloating. I mean, I know a lot of his family's Vol fans, but he didn't go there. But when you're raised around it, I mean, it's kind of like being from here. I mean, it's like my Wofford friends that are Carolina fans.
Sure.
I mean, so
I'm still waiting for the ticker to say Tony Vitello is the new head coach of Texas and the highest paid head coach in college baseball.
Well, B is going to happen.
That's what we said earlier. Whoever gets hired out of if you get one of the heavyweights, and it feels like there's 3 heavyweights that are up for this gig. One of those guys is going to end up getting more than Corbin from Texas.
Oh, well, I mean, whether Vitello stays in Knoxville or
he's going to be
Austin,
the highest paid,
he will be the highest paid.
I think Elijah said to me, probably said to you, that they're already talking about at Tennessee paying him more than Corbin.
Oh, yeah. No, I think he's going to get $3 million.
Well, I found out something today from our sales guru, Jeff. Starting today, what we're doing here is called The Handoff, sponsored by Little Pigs.
Okay.
So we're handing you off now the microphone. Handoff. Get it? Handoff.
America.
Sponsored by Little Pigs. There you go.
Well, as long as Champ brings me some food every once in a while.
Nice job there, Tyler Head. We appreciate you. Post-game show is next with Jay and Elijah here on The Game. (803-875-MENS). That's the Men's Clinic of South Carolina. And look, you got stuff going on as you get older. It might just be low testosterone. You might be having all these worries, awful things are going on. It might just be low T.